Russia's invasion of Ukraine was also just one of the topics U.S. President Joe Biden discussed today with China's President Xi Jinping. The two met face-to-face at the G20 summit in Indonesia. Now, Biden and Xi shook hands in front of the cameras before closing the doors for a private discussion. They spoke for several hours. The U.S. president met with reporters after that meeting. He said his talks with Xi were open and candid.
He was clear and I was clear that we'll defend American interests and values, promote universal human rights, and stand up for the international order and work in lockstep with our allies and partners. We're going to compete vigorously, but I'm not looking for conflict. I'm looking to manage this competition responsibly. And I want to make sure that every country abides by the international rules of the road.
And the CBC's Magda Gebrselassie is watching developments at the G20 summit for us. She's in Washington with more on today's meeting.
Well, what we heard today from Biden was this was a very direct conversation that both leaders were committed to improving relations and making plans to have officials meet in the future to hash things out, to keep hashing things out. We know that they talked about trade. We heard President Joe Biden say the goal is to prevent competition from turning into conflict. We know they talked about addressing international conflicts and global issues. For President Xi, he talked about bringing the U.S. and China relationship back on track and how important that is not just to the two countries, but to the world as well. This is what he was saying going into this meeting, and it's been translated.
A statesman should think about and know where to lead his country. He should also think about and know how to get along with other countries and the wider world.
So after the meeting, state media was reporting that Xi said Taiwan was the question at the very core of China's core interests, and that it was a red line that must not be crossed. So China claims the island as its own, while the U.S. acknowledges China's position. It also continues to have close ties to Taiwan. And what we saw this summer was tensions were high after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island. Beijing launched military drills around the island in response to that. And prior to this, after actually, we heard President Joe Biden say that the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China invaded. Well, here is what he's saying now.
I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan. And I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all. It's the same exact position we've had. I made it clear that we want to see cross-strait issues peacefully resolved, and so it never has to come to that.
We know there's so many global issues to discuss. So what more did these two leaders talk about in that meeting?
Well, as you would expect, they talked about Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. And on that topic, previously we've heard potential threats from Russia on the possible use of nuclear weapons. And Biden said that both leaders have shared the belief that the use of nuclear weapons is unacceptable coming out of this meeting. They also talked about North Korea. Biden wants China to get involved, make it clear to North Korea not to engage in long-range nuclear tests, and that if that happens, that the U.S. would have to take action, that it would send a message to North Korea, that it would defend its allies and American soil, but that none of that would be directed towards China. We also heard Biden say that these talks will continue, that the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is going to head to China at some point to keep going with that.
The CBC's Magda Gebrselassie in Washington.